public appearance of all the top 6 officials, but only Mantashe and Treasurer General Paul Mashatile showed up. All right, then, to talk, or rather to analyze issues around the ANC, we are joined in studio by Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo. Professor, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Simpiwe.
Now, the ANC chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, lashes out at supporters of President Jacob Zuma, saying that Zuma is going nowhere. So it now brings the question of the 2 centers of power. Is that really a fallacy?
Well, from my understanding, I think if you look at ANC politics, Luthuli House is always understood to be the main center of power. In other words, it sets the agenda of what happens in government within the state. But given the transition that we're currently going through, you'll find that there is this debate that the president is still there, even though he's no longer president of the ANC. He's still president of the country. How do the 2 powers at Luthuli House and in government actually articulate? And I think this is a challenge. Hence it is difficult now to talk of only 1 center of power, and the notion of 2 centers of power kicks into the stage.
Now, we're talking about a Teflon president here who's weathered so many storms and who've survived so many turbulent times. Just how vulnerable is he at this stage?
Simply, I think he is very vulnerable. He is very vulnerable because, in essence, he's now a lame duck president. If Luthuli House is strong, they could actually get to a point where they give him marching orders. They recall him, even though that doesn't set a good precedent, good perceptions about political leadership in South Africa, that we always have presidents who don't finish their terms and are recalled just before they finish the term.
Do you think the ANC is willing to take that risk?
The ANC, there is appetite within the ANC to take that risk. But I can tell you they have to tread it very carefully.
Yeah.
Tread it very carefully because, number one, if you look at the gap during elections between Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa, Cyril won, but one can hardly call it a landslide victory.
Sure.
Which basically shows that there is still strong support within the ANC for President Zuma, you see, and his faction. So if they are to think of recalling him, I think the starting point would be, first, to make sure that the National Executive Committee functions as a coherent whole. 2, Mr. Ramaphosa still needs to stamp his authority as a president of the ANC and a leader of the ANC. And that is going to take a bit of time to do. That's why I think, even though in some quarters you find the appetite to recall the president, there may not be a rush to do that, or it may not even be done at all.
Yeah. And speaking of stamping his authority, some political thought leaders are actually saying that that will entail moving that motion of removing President Zuma to a point where the State of the Nation address will be delivered by someone totally different other than Zuma. Do you agree to that?
Well, I don't think so. I think the State of the Nation address is going to be delivered by Mr. Zuma, even though he'll deliver it as a completely lame duck president. Remember also with former President Thabo Mbeki, he delivered the State of the Nation address after the Polokwane conference, but quite a lame duck president. I think he will, because I must tell you one thing. You see, what I see Cyril Ramaphosa trying to do, he's trying to do things the Mandela way, if one can put it that way. Trying to reach out, trying to build consensus, trying to build unity within the ANC. Because, you see, 2018 is only 1 year still available to the ANC to consolidate and organize itself properly before the elections. He doesn't want to go into the elections with a divided, fighting ANC. That's why I think removing President Zuma, recalling him, is something which may not even be done for the sake of unity facing the elections in 2019.
I think it's safe to say that this is now taking us back to 2008, where the President Zuma camp recalled President Mbeki on trumped-up charges. And I think it was untenable at the time that Mbeki remained the president of the country while the ANC had elected President Jacob Zuma as the party's leader.
It wasn't untenable at the time, But don't forget the relationship between President Zuma and former President Mbeki. It was so tenuous. It was so bad, you see. Zuma had been dismissed by Mbeki as deputy president of the country, and the ANC rallied around him. So the relations were quite tenuous. And I don't think we can compare that with the relationship you find between Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and Jacob Zuma. I think there is still some kind of appeasement initiatives and an appeasement spirit between Jacob Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. The hostility hasn't actually grown to a significant level whereby you can say, look, Cyril cannot be the president of the ANC while Zuma is president of the country.
And there's also been calls to align the terms of the party president to that of state president to avoid this problem. Is it likely, though?
Well, simply, I think it's something which the NGC, the coming NGC, may need to really consider, because it does create strains, really, at the level of governance.
Yeah.
Once you have the state president who was president of the ANC, no longer the president of the party, and you have a new person. I think it's one of those initiatives to modernize the ANC, which former President Mbeki started. And I think the coming NGC of the ANC may need to actually look into this again.
Right.
Yes.
Well, the NEC meets for the first time next week, Wednesday. Are we likely to see any fireworks coming out of that meeting?
I wouldn't say fireworks, Mpiwe, but what we're likely to see is the continuation of tensions which built up in the run-up to the ANC conference. People still sticking to their factional slates.
Right.
Yes, and Ramaphosa trying to harmonize and unite the National Executive Committee.
Right.
But I don't see fireworks as yet.
Now, the courts have also said Cyril Ramaphosa must set up a commission of inquiry on state capture. Does that give him the necessary leverage to do that now that he's party president?
At one level it does, but remember at another, he's still deputy president of the country, and I think that particular judgment is being appealed. Yeah. So it's all going to really depend on the legal process. But he does have now enough leverage. He's the leader of the ANC, and according to ANC, the organizational traditions, the ANC Luthuli House is actually the center of power.
Will the election of Cyril Ramaphosa as the party president regain the trust of ANC supporters, particularly the electorate, going into 2019?
Simply, I think the election of Cyril is going to save a situation which could have been dire for the ANC. It's going to save a situation which could have been very dire for the ANC. But the problem still depends on whether Cyril Ramaphosa is going to cross the Rubicon. Cyril has not yet crossed the Rubicon. When I talk about crossing the Rubicon, I'm referring to Cyril actually stamping his authority as a leader of the party. And secondly, Cyril actually dealing with the issue of corruption and perceptions of corruption surrounding the head of state, Mr. Zuma. Are they prepared to go to the 29 elections and campaign with Mr. Zuma still the head of state? A president who was put in power by the ANC? Are they prepared to take that risk? Because if they do, I'm telling you, the ANC will only be able to secure the 62% vote it got. I don't see it going up, and I don't see it getting a 2/3 majority, which Thabo Mbeki was able to.
And the fact that he doesn't have much time in rebuilding confidence in the party, I mean, 18 months, plus minus 18 months, is really not enough time for him to start doing that.
It's not enough time. So, but what it means, he needs to have what I call a short-term program. A short-term program with very clear steps. And I would say number one amongst his programs should be to deal decisively with the issue of state corruption. He must be seen to be making moves to deal with this. And secondly, Cyril will need to deal with the issue of the intelligence agencies in South Africa, how they are used to fight factional political battles. And until really unravels and deals with that network, he might also be in trouble, even before the elections in 2019. Yes. And thirdly, most importantly, the participation of citizens in the governance of the country. This you will need to look at very carefully, because it has implications for the speed and quality of delivery.
Right. Professor Kondlo, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
That is Professor Kwandiwe Kondlo talking to us about the ANC as it goes to the January 8th statement next weekend. Let's now take a look at other news-making headlines from the international front. Afghan police say the death toll from the previous night's suicide attack in Kabul has jumped to 20, with another 27